Welcome to Teolumen Insights, where we reveal the hidden forces that shape the way you live and show you how to use them to create real transformation and supercharge your health, mindset, and daily life. Here are your hosts, Emma Greenwood and Nathan Sinclair.
Welcome back to Teolumen Insights. We're going to be doing a deep dive today into the work of Timothy Morton. He's a philosopher.
Yeah.
Who's really kind of shaking things up in the world of environmental thought, especially in landscape architecture.
He's got some really interesting ideas about how we view nature.
He does. And they're...
Some of them are a little challenging.
Yeah, they're challenging, sometimes provocative for sure.
Yeah.
But I think they're really worth grappling with.
Absolutely. And I think a lot of people listening to this can probably relate to this. You know, how sometimes we see a perfectly manicured lawn and we think, oh, how beautiful, so natural.
Right. Yeah.
Morton actually argues that that kind of thinking can be a bit violent and unsustainable.
It's like we're imposing our ideas of beauty and order.
Our human ideas of beauty and order onto nature.
Onto nature, right?
Like we're trying to force it to fit into some kind of mold instead of
of
appreciating it for what it is.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. And so Morton is calling for a shift to what he calls an ecological era, where we start to recognize the agency and interconnectedness of all beings, not just humans.
Right. We need to move beyond that kind of anthropocentric view where humans are at the center of everything and start seeing ourselves as just one part of this larger web of life.
And that's where this idea of Mesopotamia comes in. And he's not just talking about the ancient civilization. He's using it as a metaphor for a certain mindset.
Exactly.
That emerged with the agricultural revolution.
Yeah. This mindset of control.
Right.
And domination over nature, exploiting it for our own short-term gain.
Right.
And his argument is that that mindset is still very much with us today and influencing the way that we design and interact with the environment.
Right. It's like we're running on outdated software.
Yes!
When it comes to our relationship with the planet.
Yes.
So how does this Mesopotamian mindset actually play out in landscape architecture?
Well, you can think about things like perfectly straight lines of trees, you know, manicured lawns, exotic plants that maybe don't belong in that local ecosystem. Yeah. It's all about control, you know, aesthetics, and often ignoring the needs of the non-human beings that share those spaces.
Those spaces, yeah.
Okay.
So that brings us to another one of Morton's big ideas. Hyperobjects.
Right.
Now, these sound a little bit sci-fi.
They do.
But they're actually pretty straightforward once you get the concept.
Yeah, once you wrap your head around it.
Yeah.
He uses this term to describe things that are so vast and complex that they're almost impossible for us to really grasp.
Right.
So think climate change, plastic pollution, the entire global ecosystem. These operate on such a massive scale, both spatially and temporally, that they challenge our usual ways of thinking and perceiving.
Like Woodrow Caviality, trying to picture the entire internet. You know it's there, this massive network, but you can't actually see all of it.
Exactly. And these hyperobjects are all around us, constantly shaping our world in ways that we may not even realize.
Right.
And Morton argues that we need to become more aware of these hyperobjects and how our actions are contributing to them.
So, for example, that plastic bag that we use for 5 minutes at the grocery store.
Right.
That's part of this hyperobject of plastic pollution, which impacts the environment for hundreds of years.
Right. And it makes you realize that even seemingly small design choices can have these huge ripple effects across time and space.
Across time and space, yeah. So that brings us back to landscape architecture. How can we apply this understanding of hyperobjects and this Mesopotamian mindset to create a more sustainable and ethical approach to design?
Well, Morton would say that we need to start designing with multiple temporal scales in mind.
Okay.
So not just thinking about how something looks right now, but how it will impact the environment and other beings over decades, even centuries.
Wow, okay.
It's a really long view.
It is a really long view.
Yeah. It's like thinking about the legacy of our designs, you know? How will they be perceived? How will they function in 100 years? In 500?
Wow. Yeah, that is a really long view. And it's not just about time, right? Morton also talks about considering different perspectives in design, not just human ones.
Exactly. He challenges us to think about, you know, the needs and the experiences of other beings, like plants and animals, even fungi and bacteria.
So instead of just building a park for human recreation, we might consider how to create a space that also provides a suitable habitat for birds or insects, or even the unpredictable forces of weather.
That's a great example. It's about moving beyond that anthropocentric design, where humans are the sole focus, and embracing a more inclusive approach that acknowledges the interconnectedness of all beings.
So this all sounds very theoretical. Are there any real-world examples of designers putting these ideas into practice?
Absolutely. There's a growing movement within landscape architecture that's really embracing these principles. For example, some designers are using native plants and ecological restoration techniques to create landscapes that support local biodiversity.
Yeah, I've also seen some projects that incorporate things like rainwater harvesting systems, permeable paving, green roofs, to help manage stormwater and reduce that urban heat island effect.
Those are all great examples, and it's not just about large-scale projects either. Even small design choices can make a difference, like choosing to plant a pollinator garden in your backyard, or using recycled materials in your home renovation.
Right, it's about recognizing that. Every action we take has an impact, and we can choose to make those impacts positive ones.
Yeah.
But shifting our entire mindset like this, that seems like a pretty daunting task. Where do we even begin?
Well, Morton suggests that we start by simply paying attention to the non-human beings around us.
Okay.
So, notice the birds singing in the trees, the insects crawling in the grass, the way that the wind moves through the leaves.
Right, it's like reawakening our senses to the natural world.
Exactly.
And recognizing that we're part of something much bigger than ourselves.
And as we become more aware of our surroundings, we can start to see that interconnectedness of all things, how our actions impact others, both human and non-human.
Right.
And that awareness can lead to more compassionate and sustainable choices.
We've been talking a lot about these big, complex ideas, but Morton also has this really interesting concept called substandard beauty. What is that all about?
It's a fascinating idea that really challenges our conventional notions of beauty. We've become so obsessed with perfection, with smooth surfaces, perfect symmetry, pristine landscapes, that we've lost sight of the beauty that exists in the imperfect, the unexpected, the unruly.
So instead of that perfectly manicured lawn, we might find beauty in a wildflower meadow.
Right.
Or a moss-covered rock.
Exactly. It's about appreciating the inherent beauty of all things, even those that we might typically consider flawed or undesirable.
He actually uses the example of hibiscus flowers, bursting through cracks in the concrete in Houston.
Oh, wow.
It's like life finding a way to express itself, despite our attempts to control it.
And there's a certain beauty in that resilience, that ability to adapt and thrive in these unexpected places.
Yeah.
It's a reminder that beauty can be found in the most unlikely of places.
So how do we actually apply this idea of substandard beauty in our own lives, in our own design choices?
It's about shifting our perspective. So instead of striving for perfection, we can embrace the imperfections, the unexpected, the things that make a space or an object unique and interesting.
It's about letting go of the need to control everything and allowing nature to express itself in its own way.
And that can lead to some really surprising and beautiful results. Think about a garden that incorporates natural elements like fallen leaves, logs, and rocks, or a building that uses recycled materials and incorporates the textures and imperfections of those materials.
It's about seeing beauty in the process of decay and renewal, in the wildness and unpredictability of nature.
And it's about recognizing that beauty is not just about aesthetics, but also about ethics.
How so?
Well, embracing substandard beauty challenges us to question our assumptions about what is valuable and desirable. It encourages us to look beyond surface appearances and appreciate the inherent worth of all things, regardless of whether they conform to our narrow standards of beauty.
It's about valuing diversity, resilience, and the interconnectedness of life. That's a pretty powerful message. So it seems like embracing this idea of substandard beauty could actually be a really positive step toward a more sustainable future.
Absolutely, because it's about shifting our values away from this consumption and disposability towards appreciation and conservation.
So instead of constantly striving for the newest, shiniest thing, we might learn to value the patina of age, the beauty of imperfection, the stories that objects and landscapes tell.
And that shift in values can have this ripple effect on our design choices, our consumption habits, and ultimately our relationship with the planet.
We've covered a lot of ground today, exploring Timothy Morton's ideas about anthropocentrism, hyperobjects, collaboration with non-human beings, and substandard beauty. It's been a real mind-bender.
His work definitely challenges us to think differently about our place in the world and the impact of our actions.
But I think there's also a lot of hope in his message. It's not about feeling guilty or overwhelmed. It's about empowering us to make.
More conscious and compassionate choices.
He's not saying we need to abandon everything we've created.
Yeah.
Or go live off the grid in the wilderness. It's about finding ways to integrate these principles into our everyday lives, our work, our design choices, our interactions with the environment.
So what are some practical steps we can take to start incorporating these ideas into our own lives?
Well, I mean, we've touched on a few already. Choosing native plants for our gardens, reducing our reliance on single-use plastics, being mindful of the energy we consume, and I think paying attention to the non-human beings around us is a great place to start. Just taking the time to notice the birds, the trees, the insects. It helps us remember that we're part of this interconnected web of life.
And that awareness can lead to a deeper sense of respect and responsibility for the environment.
I love that idea. It's not about becoming an expert in ecology or giving up all modern conveniences. It's about cultivating a sense of wonder and appreciation for the natural world and recognizing that we have a role to play in protecting it.
Exactly. And that role can be as simple as making more conscious choices in our everyday lives, or as ambitious as pursuing a career in sustainable design. Every action we take, no matter how small, can have a positive ripple effect.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into Timothy Morton's ideas, I think the key takeaway is that we have agency. We have the power to choose a different path, to design a future where both human and non-human beings can thrive.
And that's a really powerful message to carry with us as we move forward.
Thank you for joining us on Teolumen Insights. We hope you've enjoyed this exploration of Timothy Morton's work.
Yeah, his thought-provoking and inspiring work.
And we hope it sparked some new ideas and encouraged you to think differently about your own relationship with the environment. We encourage you to continue exploring these ideas and to find ways to apply them in your own lives. Together, we can create a more beautiful, sustainable, and just world for all.